That's what my son said. My Grayson. The boy I once rocked through fevered nights, who used to cry for me when he scraped his knee, now stood in front of me in a pressed gray suit, eyes cold as glass. Behind him, Serena didn't speak. She just smiled. That smile that always seemed to know something cruel. Around us, white chairs, laughter, petals on the grass. But all I could hear was the silence after his words. "You heard him," she finally added, gently fixing his boutonniere as if I were a stain to be brushed off. "This isn't the place for old grudges or old women." The usher shifted awkwardly beside me, holding the program I'd printed on my own printer because no one sent me one. My hands trembled. Not from age, but from shame. Eyes turned. Not one looked kind. I had bought a soft blue dress, the same color I wore the day I brought Grayson home from the hospital. I thought it would mean something. It didn't. I opened my mouth, but nothing came. Just a dry click. And that silence, again. Thicker than any scream. If you've ever been disrespected by someone you love, this story will speak to your heart. The dress still hung in my hallway closet when I got home. I hadn't even unzipped the back. It smelled faintly of lavender and starch. I'd ironed it at dawn, tracing each seam like a prayer. I had stitched it myself over 3 quiet weeks, not because I couldn't afford a new one, but because making something with my hands always calmed me. The fabric was soft crepe, sky blue, like the blanket Grayson had as a baby. I wanted to wear something that held a memory, something only I would understand. That's how mothers survive, I suppose, clinging to symbols the world forgets. I sat on the edge of my bed that night and looked at the photograph on my dresser. Grayson, 6 years old, standing in front of his science fair project. My mom helped me, it said in marker below the volcano model. He was grinning with crooked teeth. I remember how proud he was when we glued the lava together. I'd kept every one of his drawings, birthday cards, even the napkin where he first wrote his name at age 4. They say children grow up and forget, but this felt worse, like he had erased me on purpose. The dress slipped from the hanger and pooled at my feet. It made no sound, just soft blue on old carpet, like a memory that no longer belonged. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked. The world continued and I sat there, unseen. I wasn't officially invited to the wedding. Not really. Grayson called me 3 months prior. A rushed conversation while he was, I think, driving. "Hey, Serena and I are doing a small ceremony. Just close friends and family. Nothing big. You can come if you want. If you want. Not, we'd love to have you. Not even. It would mean a lot." Just that offhanded phrase, like he was offering me leftovers. I said yes, of course. I started saving right away. Even skipped 2 electric bills to afford the train ticket and a room at the inn near the vineyard. He never offered to help, never called again about details. The invitation came 2 weeks before the event. It wasn't addressed to Mom or Mother, just Agnes Porter, written in neat, unfamiliar handwriting. Serena's, no doubt. Inside, one of those glossy cards with gold lettering and no warmth. No mention of my name in the family section. Not even a seat number. Still, I pressed it into a frame and placed it near the kettle in my kitchen, trying to convince myself it meant something. At church, I lit a candle for them. At home, I practiced how I'd greet her parents. I even bought new shoes, low heels, the kind I hadn't worn since Grayson's graduation. I thought maybe, just maybe, this wedding could be a turning point, a soft beginning, even if we'd grown distant. But some things aren't meant to heal, not when the wound keeps being reopened. The first time I met Serena Vaughn, I brought a pie. It was pecan, Grayson's favorite. He used to beg for it every Thanksgiving. I remember standing at their new apartment door, holding that warm dish with both hands, my heart thudding like it was a first date. I was nervous, hopeful. She opened the door with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Thin, polite, calculated. "Oh," she said, tilting her head just slightly. Grayson didn't mention you were coming today. My hands tightened on the dish. He said Sunday would be a good day to visit. She moved aside, slowly, like letting me in was a chore. Her place was pristine, like a magazine spread. Gray and white everything. Cold light, glass counters, not a single photo on the walls. Grayson came out of the kitchen, his expression surprised, not pleased. "Mom, I didn't think you'd actually come." I laughed. That awkward kind of laugh women do when they're trying not to cry. "Well, I brought pie," I said, holding it up like a peace offering. Serena took it but didn't set it on the counter. She just looked at it. "He's cutting back on sugar," she said. I ended up taking it home with me that night, untouched. Still warm when I got back, but I didn't eat any. That was 2 years before the wedding. And that smile she gave me at the door? The first one? It was the softest warning I never listened to. It was tucked in the top drawer of my dresser, wrapped in a handkerchief that used to be my mother's. A tiny silver locket, heart-shaped, nothing expensive, just worn and precious. Inside, a photo of baby Grayson on one side, and on the other a strand of his baby hair I'd cut after his first birthday. I used to wear it every Sunday when he was little. He'd tug at the chain with those pudgy fingers and giggle when it tickled his nose. He gave it to me years ago, after his first job at the bookstore. "You always talk about keepsakes," he said. "Now you'll have one that's just from me." I wore it to the wedding. When Serena's bridesmaids gave me side glances, when the guests whispered as I stood alone near the back row, I kept my hand pressed gently over it, as if it were armor, but he never looked at it. Not once. When they told me to leave, when my son didn't defend me, I unclasped it quietly, right there at the vineyard gate. I held it out to him, a gesture, a silent question. He stared at it like he didn't recognize it. Serena touched his arm and said, "Let's not make this a scene." And just like that, the chain slipped through my fingers and fell into my purse. Some mothers carry photographs. I carried absence, the kind that weighs more than gold. The inn's dining room smelled of lemon wood polish and roast chicken. Candlelight flickered on every table, casting soft shadows that made the place look like a painting. I sat alone at a corner table, still in my blue dress, napkin folded neatly in my lap, like I was waiting for someone who'd forgotten me. The waitress was kind, maybe 22. She didn't ask if I was here for the wedding. She just brought me tea without sugar and a basket of warm bread. I think she knew. "Are you celebrating something?" she asked gently. I paused, looking down at the linen cloth. "No," I said. "Not anymore." There was a piano playing in the background, some old jazz tune, soft and slow. I remembered how Grayson used to dance in the living room when he was 5, arms flailing, socks slipping on the tile. I used to laugh so hard I'd forget about the bills. The tea cooled before I drank it. I watched other guests come in, couples with clasped hands, laughter in their voices. It was the kind of place meant for toasts and anniversaries. I lifted my fork and set it down again. You can live a whole life for someone and still end up invisible. That night I left a tip on the table, more than I could afford. Kindness should never go unnoticed, even if it's just warm bread when your heart is breaking. I kept my old landline, even though everyone said it was outdated. There was something about the ring, that sharp, honest sound, that made it feel more human than a text message or a silent notification. After the wedding, I left the phone on the kitchen counter, just beside the kettle. I checked it every hour for 2 days. No call, not even a message to see if I got home safe. No apology, not even a lie to soften the blow. It rang once on Monday morning, and my heart jumped. But it was the pharmacy reminding me to refill my blood pressure medication. I sat down right there on the floor, the linoleum cold against my knees, and stared at the phone like it had betrayed me. When Grayson was little, he used to call me from the school nurse's office just to say hi. "I miss you, Mom," he'd whisper, voice thick with shy affection. Now, not even a wedding could stir a word from him. I started writing a letter that afternoon. "Dear Grayson," it began, but I stopped. My handwriting looked shaky. I folded the page, blank, and placed it in the drawer with the others I never sent. Sometimes silence isn't absence. It's punishment. The kind you can't defend yourself from. That night I unplugged the phone. Some kinds of waiting don't deserve to continue. A week later, I ran into Serena's mother, Diane Vaughn, at the grocery store. She was near the deli counter, ordering something imported and expensive. Sunglasses still perched on her hair like a crown. I tried to turn before she saw me, but her voice rang out, crisp as ever. "Agnes," she said, as if tasting the name. "How unexpected." I nodded. "Diane." She glanced at the items in my basket. Bread, canned soup, a few bananas, then looked me up and down. I was in my worn cardigan, the one with the missing button, and shoes that had seen better years. Her smile was faintly amused. "Still in town?" I wanted to say. "I live here. I raised my child here. I held this town together with calloused hands and unpaid debts." But I just said, "Yes." She leaned in slightly. "Serena told me there was confusion at the wedding." Confusion? Like I'd wandered in by mistake, not been cast out by my own son. "She's very particular about moments," Diane added. "She wants everything perfect, even if it means rewriting the past?" I asked quietly. Her eyes narrowed for a breath. Then she reached into her purse and handed me a card, white, with raised letters and no warmth. "Serena's hosting a brunch next month, for the ladies." I didn't take it. Some invitations aren't worth the paper they're printed on. Her hand hovered for a moment, then dropped. That silence between us. It said everything. It was tucked behind a row of old cookbooks, where I'd hidden spare cash and keepsakes over the years. A white envelope, sealed, my name written in Grayson's handwriting. I found it by accident while reaching for a biscuit recipe. My heart leapt. I hadn't seen that handwriting in months. It wasn't recent. The letter was dated 6 years ago, the summer he moved out, the last time he and I had fought. I had begged him not to drop out of college for Serena's startup dream. "She's chasing a fantasy," I'd said. "You need something solid." He'd packed his bags anyway. We didn't speak for 3 months. This letter, it was his apology. "Mom, I know you're angry, but I need to try. Serena believes in me. I wish you did too." He said he missed my lasagna, that he thought about coming home every time it rained, that he still wore the watch I gave him. He ended it with, "Don't give up on me." But I never got it. He never sent it. And now, all these years later, I held it like a bruise that had only just surfaced. I cried on the kitchen floor, the envelope still clutched in my hands, like I was holding him again. Not the man at the wedding, but the boy who once wrote letters in blue ink and still believed we could fix things. I didn't know which hurt more, the silence he gave me now, or the words he once meant to say. There's something about folding clothes that makes your mind go quiet, or louder depending on the kind of pain you carry. That evening I stood in the laundry room with a basket of towels. I folded each one slowly, like muscle memory, my hands moving while my heart ached. I thought about that letter behind the cookbooks. I thought about how Serena had become the voice in his ear. Soft, polished, relentless. I wondered when he'd started seeing me as something to hide, an obligation, a weight that didn't fit his new life. I sat on the old stool beside the dryer and stared at the humming machine. Then I whispered a prayer. Not a dramatic one, not the kind with thunder and pleas, just a small one. Quiet. God, if there's anything left in his heart, remind him where he came from. I didn't ask for revenge. I didn't wish harm on Serena. I just wanted a trace of the boy I raised, the one who once cried when I burned my hand cooking, the one who, after his first school play, looked out into the crowd and waved only at me. I finished folding the towels and placed them neatly in the cupboard. There's a kind of strength in small rituals. They remind you of who you are, even when the world pretends you no longer matter. And in that silence, in that hum of the dryer, I felt something return. Not hope exactly, but breath. 3 weeks after the wedding, a small box arrived at my door. No note, no return address, just a plain package, light as a whisper. I almost didn't open it. Part of me was afraid it would hurt more than anything said out loud. Inside was a candle, vanilla and something else, expensive, artificial. At the bottom of the box was a tiny card that read, "For peace and closure." S, closure. As if a scented candle could erase humiliation. As if my absence at my only son's wedding could be softened by wax and perfume. I stared at it for a long time, not because I didn't know what to do, but because I did. I struck a match and lit the wick. Then I sat on the sofa, hands in my lap, and watched the flame dance. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just watched. That flame, so controlled, so small, felt like everything Serena wanted from me. Neat, quiet, disposable. Something that would burn down to nothing and leave no trace. But I wasn't that woman. I wasn't a flame in a jar. I blew it out before the wax even melted. And then slowly, I placed the candle back in the box, sealed it, and wrote 4 words on the top before setting it by the trash. Peace can't be bought. Grayson's birthday was October 14th. I never forgot. Even when he forgot mine. Every year I sent him a card, even when the addresses changed, even when I wasn't sure if he'd read it. I'd press a $5 bill inside, like I did when he was little. My handwriting had gotten shakier, but the love was still steady. This year I didn't send anything. I bought the card. It had a lighthouse on the front. He used to say they looked lonely but brave. I wrote it out, signed it with love, pressed the bill inside. But I never mailed it. I placed it on my nightstand, let it sit there like a question. The day came and went. No call, no message, just the quiet of my house and the steady tick of the clock on the wall. I baked a small cake anyway. Chocolate. I didn't even like chocolate. It was his favorite. I cut 1 slice, placed it on the good plate, and sat across from it at the table. I stared at that slice like it might bring him back, like it might erase Serena's smug silence, or the way he looked through me at the wedding. But the cake didn't speak. The phone didn't ring, and my son turned 32 without me. I covered the cake, put it in the fridge, and whispered, "Happy birthday, baby." Some traditions die slowly, not with anger, but with a soft, steady ache. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Margaret, my next-door neighbor, knocked gently on the screen door. She's 80, nearly blind in one eye, but sharp as a tack when it comes to voices. "I didn't mean to listen," she said, stepping inside, "but I heard yelling last night." I blinked. There was no one here. She looked puzzled. "You sure, Agnes? I heard a man's voice, angry, said something like, 'You never supported me,' clear as day." I froze. That phrase. It wasn't real. It was in my dream. A nightmare that had played on repeat the night before. Grayson's voice, yelling at me, his face twisted into something unfamiliar. "You never supported me. You never wanted me to be happy." Margaret touched my wrist gently. "You were talking in your sleep, sweetheart. Loud." I nodded slowly, the shame rising like heat in my chest. "I'm sorry." She waved it off. I hate seeing you like this." Then she did something unexpected. She reached into her coat and pulled out a folded photo. "This is you," she said, pointing to a younger woman in a choir robe. "Remember this day? It was from 20 years ago. My solo." Grayson had clapped the loudest. "You weren't just a mother," she said. "You were someone before all this." I didn't cry. I just held the photo. Margaret left with a small wave, and I stood in the hallway holding a version of myself I hadn't seen in years. Someone who still had a voice. Sunday morning, I walked to St. Paul's like I always did. It wasn't about religion, not really. It was about rhythm. Something steady to stand inside when everything else felt like quicksand. But that day, someone was leaning against the gate. A man. Late 50s, clean shoes, tired eyes. "Agnes Porter?" he asked. I hesitated. "Yes." He straightened. "Name's Henry. I used to work with your son years ago, back when he was at the publishing house before Serena's app took off." I blinked. I didn't know he ever mentioned me at work. He gave a dry smile. "He did. A lot, actually. Couldn't stop talking about how you raised him alone. Said you taught him everything about loyalty and grit." The words hit like warm water after frost. He reached into his coat and pulled out an old business card. On the back, in blue ink, Grayson had scribbled something. "If I ever forget where I come from, remind me. Agnes Porter, 43 Birch Lane." I swallowed hard. Henry continued. "I found it cleaning out my desk. Thought you should have it." I held that card like it was made of glass. "Why now?" I asked. He shrugged. "Maybe because I saw the wedding photos. You weren't in any of them. Just didn't sit right." He tipped his hat and walked away, leaving behind more than he knew. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel erased. I felt remembered, even if only in ink. That night, I pulled the old scrapbook down from the top shelf in my closet, the one with cracked edges and pages thick with tape and time. It smelled faintly of dust and vanilla. I opened it like you open a wound. There were photos from Grayson's kindergarten play, his first swim lesson, his awkward teenage phase with the braces and 2 long sleeves. I had saved everything, even a napkin from the diner where he told me he'd gotten into college. Each page was a love letter he'd never read. For a moment, I held the whole book over the kitchen trash bin. I even lit a match. But the flame flickered, then died in the draft from the open window. I couldn't do it. Not because I forgave him, but because those memories were mine. My work, my love, my life. They didn't belong to Serena. They weren't for a wedding guest list or a brunch invitation. They were real. I closed the scrapbook gently and slid it under the couch, where it would be safe but close. Then I sat down, knees to my chest, and whispered, "He was mine before he was hers." Not a prayer, not a curse, just the truth. Because sometimes the only justice we get is remembering the part of the story they can't erase. The part where we were everything before we became invisible. 2 days later, I walked past Bloom and Vine, the florist shop on Main, just as the delivery truck was pulling in. I hadn't planned to stop. I never bought flowers for myself. But something about the scent of jasmine in the air pulled me in like a thread. Behind the counter was Ellie, a sweet girl with copper curls who'd done the arrangements for the wedding. She looked up and hesitated. "Mrs. Porter?" I gave her a soft smile. "It's all right. You don't have to pretend." She bit her lip, glanced around, then leaned forward and whispered, "You should have been there. Everyone knew." I blinked. "Knew what?" "That Serena made him take your name off the seating chart the day before." Her voice trembled. "She said it would ruin the aesthetic if you were in the photos." I felt my throat tighten. So it hadn't been confusion. It was a decision, a choice. Ellie looked at me like she was holding back tears. "I'm sorry. I know it's not my place, but it was cruel. We all felt it." I nodded, swallowing the burn behind my eyes. Then she reached behind the counter and pulled out a single lily wrapped in brown paper. "These were extra. Take it." I held the stem gently, the petals like porcelain in my palm. Sometimes the smallest kindness from a stranger feels more honest than 1,000 words from family. I walked home with the flower pressed to my heart. Not forgiven, but seen. It was a quiet evening. I was reading by the window, my knees wrapped in a knitted throw, when the laughter started. Sharp, distinct, coming from the townhouse next door. Grayson and Serena had rented the place for a few weeks after the honeymoon. I hadn't known. No one had told me they'd be this close. Her laugh cut through the wall like a blade wrapped in silk. It wasn't just loud, it was pointed, performed. I heard glasses clink, music, a group of voices, young, bright, the kind that doesn't know what aging feels like. Then her voice rose, clear and sweet. Grayson's mother? Oh, please. She thinks she raised a saint. He just got tired of pretending. The room went still. I sat frozen, the book slipping from my lap. A few people laughed, not loud, but enough. Enough to make the air feel tight. I mean, she added with a teasing drawl, the woman still sends birthday cards with money. Who does that past middle school? More laughter. I wanted to move. I wanted to scream. But I did neither. Instead, I reached for the locket I had placed on the windowsill, the one with his baby hair still inside. I held it tight, like pressing a wound to stop the bleeding. And I realized Serena didn't just want Grayson's love. She wanted to erase mine. But some love is louder than laughter, even if no one hears it but you. That night, after Serena's laughter faded and the wine glasses stopped clinking, I opened the drawer in the hallway table, the one where I kept warranties, receipts, and the things I didn't know where else to place. At the bottom, folded 4 times and yellowed with years, was a list I'd made when Grayson was 5. It was titled, Things I Must Remember About My Son. I don't know why I wrote it. Maybe I'd read something in a parenting magazine. Maybe I was just lonely. But it was there, written in blue pen, soft and uneven. 1. He hates the feeling of wool. 2. He cries when animals get hurt in movies. 3. He loves lemon pudding, not chocolate. 4. He's afraid of deep water. 5. He sings in his sleep when he's had a happy day. 6. He says he wants to marry me when he grows up, because I make the best toast. I read each line slowly, letting the silence fill the space between them. He wasn't just my son. He was a boy with tender fears, tiny joys, and secrets only I knew. Serena had his ring. She had his name, but she didn't have this list. She didn't know that he once ran through the yard with a red cape yelling, "I'm your hero, Mama!" I refolded the list and placed it back. Not in the drawer, but beneath my pillow. Let them laugh. I had the truth. And truth, when remembered with love, is a kind of justice. The town's annual garden gala was a quiet affair. Local families, award ribbons for dahlias, iced tea in mason jars. I hadn't gone in years, but Margaret insisted I join her. "You need fresh air," she said, "and people who don't treat you like wallpaper." So I wore my sun hat, brushed a little rouge on my cheeks. I even brought lemon cookies, like I used to when Grayson was small and proud to say, "My mom made these." I didn't expect to see them there. Grayson and Serena, laughing beneath the white tent, Serena's dress like something off a magazine cover. They didn't notice me at first. I stood by the hydrangeas, frozen, cookie tin in hand. Then someone waved. "Agnes Porter! These cookies are legendary!" Heads turned, including theirs. Serena's smile tightened. Grayson's face didn't change at all. He walked over slowly. "Mom, I didn't know you'd be here." His voice was polite, formal, like I was an old neighbor, not his mother. I smiled faintly. "I used to come every year. With you." He didn't respond, just looked at the cookies. Then Serena appeared beside him. "We're gluten-free now," she said sweetly, loud enough for the people around to hear. But that was thoughtful. People watched. Faces turned away. Some pretended not to see. I felt the flush creep up my neck, not from heat, but from shame. I placed the tin on the table, unopened, and walked toward the exit. No one stopped me, not even my son. I found the tin 2 days later on my front porch. Same floral lid, same ribbon, slightly askew. Inside, all the cookies, untouched. There was no note, no explanation, just the silence of rejection, wrapped neatly in metal and sugar. I sat on the porch steps and stared at it for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But I remembered the first time Grayson ever baked with me. A mess of flour, cracked eggs, laughter that filled the kitchen like sunlight. He'd smeared icing on my nose and said, "You're the sweetest thing in this house." I kept that moment like a pressed flower in my chest. Preserved, fragile, still beautiful. I picked up the tin, walked to the backyard, and set it gently in the trash. Not because I was angry, but because I wouldn't carry their cruelty into my kitchen. A kitchen where I had sung lullabies, bandaged fingers, baked birthdays, grieved alone. They didn't want the cookies. Fine. But I would never let them make me bitter. As I turned to go back inside, I noticed a single cookie missing. Margaret. She must have taken one when no one was looking. Bless her. Sometimes all it takes is one person who still believes your love has flavor, and one cookie to remind you you're not invisible. A week later, Serena posted a video online, a polished montage from the wedding. Edited music, drone shots, slow-motion smiles. I shouldn't have watched it, but I did. I sat at the kitchen table, my laptop humming, the tin of tea unopened beside me. The footage showed Serena walking down the aisle, her dress glittering. Grayson waited at the altar, hands folded, nervous and proud. Then came the toasts. Her father spoke first, praising her ambition and poise. Then Serena stood, smiling with that effortless charm she wore like perfume. Marriage is about letting go of the past, she said. Building something new, something better. Laughter, applause. Then Grayson's toast. My boy, standing tall, voice clear. I'm grateful for the people who shaped me, the ones who taught me when to hold on and when to let go. His eyes swept the room. A pause. I've learned that love doesn't mean clinging to history. It means choosing your future. Thank you, Serena, for showing me that. People clapped. I sat frozen. No mention of his mother. No trace of the woman who had worked double shifts to pay for his braces, who sold her grandmother's ring to buy him his first laptop. He didn't forget me. He erased me. I closed the laptop, and for the first time, I didn't feel grief. I felt dignity. Because if they had to silence me to feel strong, maybe my presence was more powerful than they could bear. Mrs. Henderson knocked on my door just after supper, her cane tapping the porch like a soft warning. She hadn't aged much since Grayson's childhood lessons. Same posture, same pearl earrings, same gentle voice wrapped in firmness. I was driving by, she said, and I thought of you. I let her in, made tea, set out the good cups. She looked around my living room where the upright piano still sat in the corner, dusty now, silent. Grayson was one of my favorites, she said. Not because he was the best. Lord knows he had trouble with tempo, but because he always tried so hard. I smiled faintly. He hated practicing. She nodded, but he always came back. That says something. There was a pause. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a thin folder. He wrote this, years ago, for a school assignment. I found it while cleaning. It was an essay, titled, "The Person Who Made Me Strong." I opened it slowly. His words barely legible, 12 years old and honest. My mom is strong because she never quits, even when she's tired, even when people don't say thank you. She's like a lighthouse. Even when it's stormy, she stays up. I pressed the page to my chest. Mrs. Henderson placed her hand over mine. He's lost, she said gently. But you're not. And in that moment, I didn't feel forgotten. I felt remembered by the one he used to be. It came on a Wednesday afternoon, the kind of day where even the wind felt tired. The light on the landline blinked, a message, rare these days. I stared at it, heart ticking louder than the clock. I pressed play. Serena's voice. Hi, Agnes. I know we haven't spoken. I just wanted to let you know that Grayson's been promoted. Big news, lots of changes. We'll be moving to Seattle. Pause. I practiced breath. I thought you'd hear it eventually, and I didn't want it to be awkward. Her tone was syrupy, smooth, not cruel, just polished. We'll be renting out the townhouse. If you need anything from the garden shed, please clear it out by Friday. Thanks. Click. No, how are you? No, we regret what happened. Just logistics, a transaction. I sat there, blinking. I hadn't even known they were thinking of moving. Part of me expected a crack in her voice, a thread of guilt, but there was none. Just a finality, a box checked, a past discarded. I walked to the shed out back that evening. The tools were still in place, a rusted bike, a crate labeled Grayson College. I didn't open it. Instead, I picked a trowel from the hook and began turning the soil near the fence. Quiet work, honest work. If they were building a new life, so would I. But mine would have roots, and no one would have to pretend I didn't belong. I was dropping off a few old sweaters at the local thrift store. Things that no longer fit, or maybe things I no longer wanted to see in my closet. When the woman behind the counter paused, holding up a cardigan. "This is handmade," she said, running her fingers over the stitching. "Did you knit this?" I nodded. "Years ago." She smiled. "It's beautiful. Someone will love it." That small sentence, "someone will love it," hit me harder than I expected. I looked around the shop. So many things, once precious, now waiting for new homes. Forgotten mugs, baby shoes, framed photos without faces. "Do you take keepsakes?" I asked softly. She tilted her head. "What kind?" I reached into my purse and pulled out the birthday card I'd never mailed, the one with the lighthouse. "I was saving it," I said. "But I think I'm done waiting." She took it gently. "I'll place it by the register. Maybe someone who needs to hear those words will find them." I left feeling strangely light, because letting go isn't always surrender. Sometimes it's grace. As I walked past the window, I saw the card standing upright beside the cash jar, its blue ink catching the light. Maybe love, when released, still finds its way into the world, and maybe, just maybe, it blooms where it's finally welcomed. It was a small funeral. Margaret's brother had passed. I went because she asked, and because grief, even distant, always deserves company. The church smelled of lilies and wood polish. The pews creaked under the weight of quiet sorrow. After the service, I stood with Margaret near the steps, hands clasped, nodding as people passed. And then I heard it. A whisper. Behind me. "That's her. Grayson Porter's mother. The one from the wedding." It wasn't cruel, just aware. I turned slowly. Two women I didn't know. Perhaps Serena's circles or distant family. Their expressions froze when I met their eyes. I gave a small nod, a silent acknowledgement. Then one of them, the younger, stepped closer. "I just want to say, what they did wasn't right. Everyone saw it," her voice trembled. "You carried yourself with grace." I blinked. She touched my arm lightly. "Some of us noticed. We did." And then she walked away. No applause, no grand gesture. Just that, a whisper of truth. It stayed with me through the reception, through the evening, through the ride home under a sky slowly turning to dusk. For so long, I'd felt invisible. But in that whisper, I saw something shift. They hadn't silenced me completely. Some stories echo even when they try to bury them, and sometimes dignity, when worn quietly, speaks louder than shame. It had been years since I opened the old family Bible, the one with the cracked leather spine and gold-edged pages that stuck together from age. But that night, something pulled me toward it. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the whisper from the funeral still echoing in my ears. Or maybe it was just time. I pulled it from the shelf, heavy with dust and memory. Inside, tucked between the Psalms and Proverbs, was a folded letter, not one I remembered placing there. The handwriting was unmistakable, Grayson's. I unfolded it with trembling fingers. "Mom," it began, "if you ever find this, it means I didn't have the courage to send it when I should have." I held my breath. He wrote about the guilt, about how Serena wanted things to be clean, tidy, a new life without baggage. He wrote that he didn't fight hard enough, that silence was easier than standing up to her. He ended with this: "You deserved better." I don't know how to fix what I broke, but if there's still a door open, I'd like to find it someday. I sat there in the flickering light, letter in my lap, tears quietly soaking the pages of scripture beneath. It wasn't redemption, not yet, but it was a crack in the wall, and through that crack, a little light. The Bible closed gently in my lap, heavier now, not from paper but from possibility. It was unexpected, a knock at dusk, firm but unsure. I opened the door to find a young man in a navy jacket, hair slightly tousled, holding a paper bag. "Agnes Porter?" he asked. "Yes, I'm Daniel, Serena's brother." I stiffened, ready for another wound dressed as civility. He noticed. "I'm not here to defend her." I stepped aside hesitantly. He walked in like someone entering a museum, quiet, respectful. He placed the bag on my kitchen counter. "She doesn't know I'm here, and she wouldn't approve." He pulled out a small photo album. Old Polaroids, faded corners. "These are from Grayson's college years. Some of them you might not have." I opened it. There he was, Grayson laughing, Grayson holding a guitar, Grayson wearing the scarf I'd knitted. Daniel looked down. "He used to talk about you all the time. How you worked nights so he could study. How you kept his baby teeth in a tin." I smiled involuntarily. "Still do." He hesitated. "Serena, she has a way of making people doubt what they know, what they feel. She twists things. But I remember Grayson before her." A pause. "He loved you. He still does. He's just buried in pride and maybe shame." Daniel stood to leave, then turned at the door. "Some of us see what happened. Not everyone's blind." After he left, I held that album like it was a newborn, proof that I once existed in his joy, and maybe still did. I hadn't opened the jewelry box in years. It sat in my bedroom drawer, buried beneath scarves and old letters, velvet faded and hinges stiff. But something nudged me toward it. Maybe the photo album, maybe Daniel's visit, maybe the letter in the Bible still echoing in my chest. Inside were the familiar things. My mother's brooch, a broken watch, a locket I never wore. And then the key. Small, brass, slightly tarnished. I had forgotten it existed. It belonged to the old chest in the attic, the one Grayson and I used to call the treasure box. We'd fill it with drawings, macaroni art, summer souvenirs. When he left for college, I locked it. Thought I'd wait until he came home again. He never did. That night I climbed the attic stairs slowly, key pressed between my fingers like a secret. The chest creaked open. Inside, everything was still there. A handprint in finger paint labeled Mom's Boy. A paper crown from his 7th birthday. A cassette tape labeled Grayson Sings to Mama. I sat on the attic floor, surrounded by echoes. The kind of love that doesn't vanish. It just waits. The key had never just opened a chest. It opened a part of me I'd sealed away. And now, even if he never asked for it, I held the proof that our love had once been simple, loud, unashamed. Sometimes justice isn't in revenge. It's in remembering who you were, and still are. I was mailing a letter, not to Grayson, but to the local paper. A recipe column submission, something simple. Lemon scones with lavender glaze. Just a small act of reclaiming myself. The woman behind me in line tapped my shoulder. "Excuse me, are you Agnes Porter?" I turned, unsure. "Yes?" She smiled, not wide but kind. "You probably don't remember me. I went to school with Grayson. We were in the same biology class." Her name came to me slowly. Lila. Always soft-spoken, always polite. "I saw what happened," she continued, her voice dropping. "The wedding. How you were treated. My mom told me." I looked down, embarrassed. But she touched my hand gently. "You didn't deserve that." She hesitated, then added, "He used to talk about you all the time. He said you made the best sandwiches in the world and that no one understood him like you did." A pause. "I just wanted you to know that Before everything changed, you were his whole world. The clerk called, "Next!" Lila smiled. "Anyway, I hope you're okay." I watched her walk out, her words staying long after she left. Because sometimes justice doesn't arrive in grand moments. Sometimes it's just someone remembering your sandwiches and saying, "You mattered." I mailed my recipe. Then I walked home a little straighter. Sunday morning, I arrived early to St. Paul's. The sanctuary was still quiet, bathed in soft light through the stained glass windows. It smelled of old wood and lemon oil, the kind of scent that settles into your memory more than your nose. As I passed the bulletin board near the foyer, something new caught my eye. A handwritten note pinned in the corner. White paper, black ink. It read, "To the mother who was not honored but never stopped loving, we see you." No signature, just that. I stood there, hand on the edge of the cork board, as the hum of organ keys began behind me. Someone had noticed. Someone somewhere had seen the quiet ache. The missing face in the wedding photos, the empty pew, the absence no one dared name. Maybe it wasn't about my name. Maybe it was about being seen beyond it. I didn't need a stage. I didn't need a microphone. I needed that note. Simple, anonymous, true. During the service, I didn't sing the hymns. I just held that sentence in my chest like a stone warmed by the sun. Afterward, I copied the note into the back of my Bible next to Grayson's letter. And for the first time, the weight of my grief didn't feel like something to carry alone. It felt shared. And shared sorrow is the beginning of healing. The phone rang just as the sky turned orange, that deep, dusky hue that makes everything look softer, even the past. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. "Mom?" His voice. Grayson. For a moment I couldn't breathe. His voice had changed, deeper, slower, but still his. I said nothing. He cleared his throat. "I know it's late. I don't know why I waited this long." Still, I was silent. "I found the letter," he continued. "The one I never mailed. In the Bible. I forgot I'd even written it." I let the silence stretch, not to punish, but to make room for truth. "I shouldn't have let her treat you that way," he said, voice cracking. "At the wedding, before, all of it." Still no apology, but the cracks were showing. "I thought cutting you out would make life cleaner," he added. "It didn't, it just made it lonelier." Finally I spoke. "You didn't forget me, Grayson. You erased me." A pause. "I know." Outside, a bird chirped. One of those soft evening sounds that remind you life keeps going even when it hurts. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said. "But I wanted you to know." I remember. It wasn't enough. But it was a beginning. And sometimes a beginning is more powerful than an ending. I didn't say goodbye. I said, "I'm here." The next morning I sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where I'd once written Grayson's school notes, grocery lists, and prayers I never mailed. This time I wrote to him. Not to Serena, not to the version of him that stood in a vineyard and asked me to leave, but to the boy who wore a red cape and called himself my hero. "Grayson," I began, "this isn't a letter of forgiveness. It's a letter of remembering." I told him about the night he first rode a bike without training wheels, how he fell, scraped his knees, but still looked back to see if I was watching. I told him I always was. I reminded him of the songs we sang in the car, the way he used to hold my hand in crowded places like I was his anchor. And then I wrote the truth. "You hurt me. Not by marrying Serena, not even by forgetting me, but by letting someone else rewrite the story I helped build. I carried you, not just in my arms, but in every decision, every sacrifice, every quiet night I spent alone so you could have light." I ended with one sentence. "You still matter to me, but I matter to me too." I folded it neatly, placed it in an envelope, and set it in the drawer with the others. Not because I wouldn't send it, but because this time it was for me. It was Sunday afternoon when the knock came, not rushed, not heavy. Just present. I opened the door to find Grayson standing there. No suitcase, no flowers, just him. He looked thinner, tired, like a man who'd spent too many nights looking backward. "I was nearby," he said, hands deep in his pockets. "Didn't think you'd answer, but I needed to try." I stepped aside. He paused. "Do you want me to come in?" I looked at him for a long moment, the curve of his shoulders, the way his eyes avoided mine. And I thought of all the times I'd stood alone on the porch, waiting for a car that never came. Then I said, "You're not here to fix the past." He shook his head. "No, just to face it." I nodded. "Then you may come in." He entered quietly, eyes scanning the room like he was returning to a dream he barely remembered. He saw the Bible on the table, the scrapbook, the cookie tin, now filled with tea bags. His voice caught. "This place hasn't changed." "No," I said gently. "But I have." We sat across from each other in the same chairs we used to use for puzzles and hot cocoa. There were no dramatic tears, no soaring music, just presence, real, unedited, and sometimes that's how justice arrives. Not with noise, but with the soft courage to open a door and to be welcomed in silence. We sat for a while, sipping tea that had gone lukewarm. Grayson didn't say much. He kept looking around the room like each object held a memory he wasn't ready to touch. Then he stood, walked over to the bookshelf, and paused in front of a silver frame. It was a photo of the two of us. He was 10, missing 2 teeth, grinning. I had my arm around him, wind blown and laughing. We were at the lake, the day we got sunburned and sang off-key in the car all the way home. He picked it up slowly, brushing his thumb over the glass. "I remember this day," he said. "You packed extra sandwiches because I always forgot mine." I didn't reply. He looked down. "Serena didn't want any photos of you at the wedding. Said it would make things complicated." I waited. "But it wasn't her choice," he added. I let it happen. He turned the photo over, saw the message I'd written in faded pen. "My boy, always, no matter how far." His shoulders sank. "I didn't think it mattered anymore," he whispered. "It mattered," I said, even when I pretended it didn't. He set the photo down gently, not back where it was, but on the center of the table, where it belonged. Sometimes the smallest gestures, a frame repositioned, a memory reclaimed, carry more justice than any apology, and more truth than any toast. Later that afternoon, Grayson asked if he could walk through the garden. It wasn't much. Just a few rows of rosemary, some roses that bloomed stubbornly, and the pear tree I planted the year he turned 16. He paused by the gate. It had always been a little stiff, the latch tricky. "Still sticks," he murmured, fumbling with it. "Lift and slide," I said without thinking, the way I used to when he was small and too impatient to remember. He did. The gate creaked open. We stepped into the garden like it was sacred ground. He stopped beside the pear tree, placing a hand on its trunk. "You said this tree would outlive us both." I nodded. "It just might." He looked up. "It gave fruit last year. Best season yet." We stood in silence, the kind that isn't empty but full of everything unsaid. "I haven't been a good son," he finally said. I looked at the tree instead of him. "You were once. That doesn't erase." "No," I interrupted, "but it lives beside it." He bent down and picked up a fallen pear. Soft, bruised, but still whole. He held it out to me and I took it. The gesture was quiet. No theatrics, no rehearsed lines. Just a son handing his mother something from the ground, where their roots once tangled. The gate didn't creak as he closed it behind us. This time, it stayed open. Before he left that day, Grayson hesitated at the door. "I have something," he said, reaching into his jacket pocket. His hands shook, not from cold, but from memory. It was the locket, the one I'd tried to give him at the wedding, the one he looked at like it meant nothing. He held it carefully now, like it might break. "I found it in one of Serena's boxes," he said quietly. She said it didn't match the decor. My throat tightened. She never asked where it came from, he continued. But I remembered. He looked at me, eyes wet. You wore this every Sunday. I used to pull at the chain until you laughed. I took it from him slowly, letting the metal settle into my palm like a returning breath. It still smells like you, he whispered. I didn't ask why he'd kept it, or why it was hidden. I simply fastened it around my neck again, the click of the clasp loud in the silence between us. He looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw not the man trying to escape his past, but the boy who used to fall asleep in my lap, safe and sure. I can't undo what I've done, he said. No, I replied. But you can honor what's left. He nodded. And in that moment, the locket wasn't just a symbol of the past. It became the bridge between who we were and who we might still become. A week later, an envelope arrived. Pale pink, scented, expensive. Inside, a card. You are cordially invited to a ladies' brunch hosted by Serena Vaughan. Formal attire requested. RSVP by Friday. I stared at it for a long moment, then smiled. Not out of joy, but recognition. This wasn't reconciliation. This was performance. A photo opportunity, a power move, a chance for Serena to say, see, we included her, but I wasn't a prop. I wasn't a name to be tucked into a program or a backdrop for her curated life. I placed the card beside the locket on the table, then poured myself a cup of tea. I didn't RSVP. I didn't write a note. I simply let it sit there, untouched, until the week passed. And then I returned to my garden, pulled on my gloves, and began planting marigolds. Bold, golden, defiant. Margaret stopped by and asked if I was going. No, I said. I have roots to tend. We laughed softly, the kind of laughter that knows pain but chooses dignity. Because some invitations aren't bridges. They're traps dressed in pastel. And sometimes the greatest act of justice is not walking into the room where they once silenced you, but standing tall outside it, unbothered, unmoved, and uninvited by choice. That evening, as the sun lowered behind the trees, Grayson called again. Not long, just a few minutes. I told Serena I'm taking some time, he said. Space. I didn't ask what that meant. I just listened. She said I was choosing you over her, he added. But it's not about sides. No, I said gently. It's about truth. He was quiet for a while, then softly. The truth is, I miss you. I closed my eyes. I miss Sunday pancakes, he went on. The smell of your hand lotion. Even the way you say my name when you're disappointed. He chuckled. A real one. Not performative. Not rehearsed. I kept pretending that forgetting you made me freer, he said. But all it made me was smaller. I said nothing. He asked, do you think we can start again? I thought of the scrapbook, the locket, the unopened invitation, the tree in the garden, the gate that stayed open. And I said, no. A pause. But we can continue. There was a breath on the line, something between grief and relief. Thank you, he whispered. I didn't say you're welcome. I said, just be honest next time, because justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet moment of truth reclaimed, spoken not to the world, but to the one who needed to say it most. It had rained that morning. Not hard, just enough to soften the earth and leave the air smelling of lavender and loam. I stood at the edge of the garden in my old sweater, watching the light fade. The marigolds were blooming. The pear tree stood tall, its branches generous, and the gate, once stubborn, now swung easily with the breeze. The locket hung warm against my chest, resting just above my heart. Grayson hadn't called again. Not yet. But I didn't wait by the phone. I had planted basil that day, watered the roses, written a new recipe, laughed with Margaret about the pastor's off-key hymn. Life didn't restart. It simply continued, softer, truer. I sat on the garden bench, the one Grayson built with crooked nails when he was 15. I ran my fingers over the grain, still uneven, still strong, and I whispered, not to the wind, not to the past, but to myself. I was never invisible. That truce, small, steady, rooted, had bloomed despite them. Despite silence, despite shame, despite the years spent waiting to be chosen. The sun dipped behind the house, casting gold across the soil, the leaves, my skin. And in that moment I didn't feel forgotten. I felt full, like something had returned to its place. Not him, not entirely, but me. That night before bed, I walked through the house, turning off each lamp one by one, except the one by the window. I left it on. It was something my mother used to do. Always leave a light on for love that knows its way back, she'd say. Not as an invitation, but as a promise. The photo Grayson had placed on the table remained there, untouched. The letter I wrote stayed in the drawer, read once, no longer needed. Outside, the garden slept beneath the stars. The marigolds closed. The wind settled, and the house, my house, exhaled, not waiting, not mourning, just being. In that stillness, I thought of all the women watching, the mothers, grandmothers, sisters who gave everything and were left holding silence. And I whispered, for them and for me, respect isn't inherited, it's earned, day by day, seed by seed, word by word. The past didn't vanish. It rooted itself quietly beneath my feet, and the light, soft, steady, stayed on all night.